everyone, and welcome to another episode of Treats on the Streets. My name is Gavin. Thanks for joining me today. Today I want to talk about the types of different cars that I compared this to when I was looking for a car to buy, and why I ended up going with the choice that I did, which is the E36 M3. When I was shopping for a new car, I'd never owned a rear-wheel drive car before. I've always had all-wheel drive or front-wheel drive. Both were boosted. I just wanted to try something that was different that I hadn't done before, which is rear-wheel drive. I wanted to be able to drift. And I wanted to be able to just experience that and see what it's like so that I could figure out what I liked more. And let me tell you, rear-wheel drive's a lot of fun. So, anyways, the cars that I was looking at, the cars that I had decided that I wanted to look at, that were in my price range, that were in my budget, were an S2000, a Honda S2000, either an AP1 or an AP2, a Nissan 350Z, or a BRZ, a Subaru BRZ. So what I'm going to do now is to break down each individual vehicle and talk about the things that I liked about each one and the reason why I chose or did not choose them. So the first one that I think I want to talk about will be the Honda S2000. Now, one of my favorite things about the S2000 is the engine that's in it. I've never had something that had such a high red line that I could rev out and just have a lot of fun that way. I just thought that it would be really fun to have something that you could rev out. I've seen a lot of people drifting them, I've seen a lot of people doing some cool burnouts, and it just looked like a fun car. Yes. I have to be honest that I didn't really end up driving too many of those or really looking into them too much, just because around where I live, they're pretty hard to find in good condition. And what I didn't want to do is find one that was in bad condition and then get a bad taste in my mouth about what kind of car they are. So I always feel like when you're test driving something, you should try something as close to what you're going to buy as possible, or maybe even just a little bit better than what you would buy, as far as the condition and mileage and the year and all that stuff. Another good thing about S2000s and just Hondas in general is because of their popularity, there's huge aftermarket support for them. You can pretty much find anything that you want, and it's not going to be that expensive for them. Now, something else, considering the engine that I really liked, is the fact that the motors that come in the S2000s, although they may not have that much torque, they're okay on the power, and if you feel like you want to add more via forced induction, they're really strong engines. So you can put turbos on them or superchargers and make 300, 400 or more horsepower and not really have to worry too much about screwing up the reliability. I really like the way that the S2000s look, and I also thought that having VTEC would be kind of a fun thing to try out as well. Just because everything, like I said, in the past I've had has come turbocharged, I wanted my first naturally aspirated experience just to be something a little unique, more than just the average NA engine. Now on to the reason why I ended up not choosing an S2000. Now, one of them was just because it's a lot harder to find a clean one. Now, that can be said with a lot of other cars, especially the E36 M3 that I ended up buying, but it just was really hard for me to get a good experience of what that car would be like in the condition that I would want it. Another reason I ended up not going with an S2000 is just because with the ones that are in better condition and with the lower miles, I think just because of their popularity, their price is quite a bit higher than I wanted to pay. I'm talking for like a 2006-ish S2000, it just was a little more than I wanted to pay. And if I bought one, because they are convertibles, I just don't really feel safe not having a hard top roof. I know you can buy hardtops for them, and let me say, when people buy hardtops for S2000s, they look so good. Something else that kind of bothered me about S2000s, the older ones, that I would have been looking at as far as what was in my price range, they didn't come with the type of creature comfort, some of the things that I like. I did hear that they were a little bit louder and kind of harsh to drive, which can be really fun, but I was looking for something that had just a touch more refinement than the S2000 offered. That doesn't mean that I don't like them, and that doesn't mean that they're not a great car, because I can guarantee you that if I would have gotten one, I would be having a ton of fun with it. It just wasn't what I wanted exactly at the time, so I didn't get it. Now, next on the list was the Subaru BRZ. Now, If you've been with the channel for a long time, if you're one of the OG subscribers, you'll know that I've had a lot of experience with BRZs, namely my friend Landon's BRZ. And my top viewed videos that I have ever made have been when we wide-bodied his car with a Rocket Bunny kit. And working on his car and modifying it, he also ended up putting a turbocharger on it. But just between that and the Rocket Bunny kit and the way that it drove, man, the BRZs have such sharp steering and handle so good out of the box. If there's one prominent feature about the BRZs that I really liked, it was definitely the handling. The steering rack is quick. You don't have to point the steering wheel that much to change a lot of direction. And it's so responsive. Obviously they were making the car with only 200 horsepower and like 150 foot-pounds of torque, so power wasn't going to be one of the big selling points. So they put a lot of R&D into the handling, and it definitely showed. Now the bad thing about me having driven a BRZ and having experiences with them, is that when you experience something so good, it's hard to settle for anything less. And I do have to admit that the handling in the BRZ, if you're going to prioritize response and sharpness and not so much refinement, is definitely going, hands down, is better in the BRZ. Now because of that, I am going to be doing some stuff to the E36 to kind of make up for that slower steering and the less responsive steering. So that's a little hint into what might be coming next on the channel. And no, it's not a Z3 steering rack, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, the BRZ is another car like the S2000 that if I would have bought, which obviously would have been used, probably like a 2013 or 2014, I would have really loved that car. I would have definitely been satisfied. Something else I really liked about the BRZ is the seating position. You sit really low in the car, and it just makes you feel like you're in this little sporty cockpit, and I really liked that. Not to mention, they just look really cool in general. All right, so now that we've gone over that, I think we need to mention the reasons why I ended up not going with a BRZ. So, as far as keeping something the way that it is with engine power, the BRZ, although you still can drift them, and although I'm not saying they're slow by any means, they still feel peppy. Honestly, when I rode in them, it felt faster than I thought it was going to be, just based off of all the videos and stuff that I've watched about them. With only 150 foot-pounds of torque, anytime that you're going up hills, or you have to pass somebody, you really have to downshift and just wrap that sucker out so that you can get moving fast enough to do what you want to do. Now that's actually a pretty fun thing, and some people may say that that's one of the reasons that they like the engine. But for me, and just my personal opinion, for daily driving purposes, I just wanted something that had more torque and was a little easier to drive and let me just stay in gears longer. Now if you have one of those and you're planning on boosting it, then that's a different story. And I should say that no matter which car I would have chosen, I think forced induction is in the future anyways. But for the time that it would have taken for me to get to the point where I was able to do forced induction, I just wanted something that would be a little more daily drivable and just had a little bit more power and especially torque for the day-to-day use. Now again, if I would have bought a BRZ, would I have been dissatisfied? Would I not have fun? Would I wish that I didn't buy the car? Probably not. In fact, I can guarantee you that I would have had a lot of fun. So now that we've gone over the S2000 and the BRZ, it's time to hit on the 350Z, which was the runner-up in the decision that I was making into what car that I wanted to buy. If I wouldn't have gone with the E36 M3, I probably would have ended up with a 350Z. Now, of all the ones that I hear driving down the road, every single time that I hear one get on it, every single time, especially if they have an exhaust, I always appreciate it. Another thing that I really liked about the 350Z was the fact that that V6 engine that comes in them has a good amount of power and a good amount of torque from the factory. If you just do a few bolt-on mods to kind of open things up, you could probably just leave it that way and I'd be pretty satisfied with it. Of course, you always get used to power and you always want more, but for the time being, and I guess for the short-term future, I would have been just fine with having that engine the way that it is. For a first rear-wheel drive car, I felt like it would have been a really good car. When I drove it, it felt predictable. I didn't feel like there was a huge learning curve in learning how to drive the car. And just like S2000s and BRZs, it's possible to get them with limited slip differentials, which I definitely would not look at any of the cars unless they had one, because one of the main reasons I wanted a rear-wheel drive car is to be able to drift. Like that. Another thing I really like about 350Zs is the look of them. I think they look cool, they look really sporty, and although they were a little bit heavier, the heaviest one in this group that we're talking about, I think that heaviness kind of lended to the predictability of the car. Just something about them when I drove it kind of made me, well, I just liked them. Okay, so now, if the 350Z was the runner-up for what I personally wanted, why did I not choose the 350Z? So, I think the first thing I'm going to mention, and the biggest reason why I ended up not going with the 350Z, is the fact that I just like to be unique, to have something that not everybody has. And 350Zs are a really common car. Probably out of the BRZs, actually there's one right here as I say that, right there. Out of the S2000s and out of the BRZs and 350Zs, I probably see the most of 350Zs. Now that's saying something, meaning that a lot of people like them and a lot of people buy them, but it just means that, you know, I just felt like I just would be it just would be another 350Z. Now for you, that may not necessarily be a bad thing. I don't really think it's really a bad thing. Like I said, I just wanted something that was a bit more unique and just stood out a little bit more. And honestly, I have to say, kind of between that and the interior refinement, there was just a ton of plastic inside of the 350Z. It just really wasn't the type of interior that I was looking for in my next car. Now, if that's not something that you prioritize really high on your list, then obviously that wouldn't be an issue to you. And as I've been saying this whole time, if I would have bought one, I guarantee that every time I got in it, I still would have a big smile on my face when I'm driving it. So no knock to any of these. I think we've covered pretty well all the cars that I almost bought and what I like about them and why I didn't buy them. Now let's get to why I bought the E36 M3 that I'm driving right now. The biggest thing that I liked about the E36 M3 is the fact that they are very uncommon. In fact, besides the E30 M3, the generation before this, these are the rarest M3s that have ever been built. Besides special editions like GTSs and things like that. I hardly ever see them on the road. Now I see 325s, I see 328s and things like that, and even those I don't see that often, but I especially hardly ever see E36 M3s. Something else I really like about the E36 M3 is this sweet S52 engine. Now if you watch Car Throttle, if you're subscribed to their YouTube channel, you'll see that he did a video where he kind of knocks on the US version, the US spec E36 M3. Because, and one of the big reasons he knocked on it was because it didn't come with as good of an engine or as powerful as an engine as the Euro spec ones. This S52 that comes in this car doesn't have individual throttle bodies. It's got a lot of differences and just a lot of things were left out that were in the Euro spec ones. But does that mean that the S52 isn't a good engine? No, it's actually my favorite part of this car. And if you like Hondas, if you like S2000s, the E36 M3 may be a car that you would really enjoy because of the single Vanos that it has. So, and these M3s, at least in the S52, the Vanos kicks in right about 5,200, just over 5,000 RPMs, and it sounds a lot like VTEC, where there's an immediate switchover and you can hear it get louder. Like this. And so that's a big reason why, I mean, I'm filming right now so I don't have the windows down just so the audio's better, but basically every time I drive this car I roll down the windows so that I can hear the intake noise, all that induction sound, and the Vano switching over. I love the S52. Another big reason I love the S52 is it has a lot of torque, more than I expected. So when I'm going up hills and I'm in higher gear, or just when I want to pass or when I want to accelerate, I hardly ever have to shift down. I just hit the gas and it goes. It's a pretty torquey engine. And because it's an inline 6, a BMW inline 6, 3.2 liters, it sounds awesome. It's really throaty. It just sounds like a big, powerful engine. When I give friends rides, one of the things that I notice that they mention the most is the fact that how good BMW engines sound, and I have to agree. They're pretty unique. You don't hear them all the time. They're just cool. So concerning the interior of the E36s too, check out these sweet Vaders. I love these leather seats. Now admittedly, they're not terrible for comfort, but they're not the best seats in the world, but they come with leather. They come with these cool M stripes on them, and they look awesome. That's why they got the name Vaders, because they look like freaking Darth Vader. Now, it being a BMW, it came with a lot of things that were kind of ahead of its time for the average car as far as amenities go on the inside. So this is a 1999 M3, the last year that they made them. Oh, the last year that they made the E36 M3s. And what this car has that I really liked was the sunroof, which is automatic opening, by the way. Automatic down and up driver and passenger windows. Dual automatic climate control, so you can set it for each the passenger and the driver. It also has this 18-button onboard computer where you can see things like the temperature, your fuel range, your average miles per gallon. It also has a little gauge on the dash for instant miles per gallon. I've got heated leather seats, leather-wrapped steering wheel and shift knob. And the back seats are actually practical enough that you can fit somebody back there and it's not too bad. It's definitely better than the BRZ's back seats. Now, as far as being hard to find, because of their rarity, they are really hard to find. I live in Utah and I had to buy this car out of Michigan. You can buy E36 M3s for quite a bit cheaper than you can buy any of the other cars that I mentioned before, but that's because those ones are gonna have like 200,000 miles on them or more. This particular one that I found out of Michigan only had 71,000 miles when I bought it. And it's in really good condition. It's super clean. Now, ones in this condition with this mileage, their price is, you know, around $15,000 or $16,000. That's what they go for. Maybe like $14,500 if you find a good deal. I found this car for a steal from a guy, an older guy who didn't really understand what he had, and sold it to me for 12,000 bucks. These cars come with LSDs that work really well. They also come with traction control. It's called ASC, unlike S2000s. Which is sometimes good to have when you're driving in bad weather or when you're letting a friend drive the car that you don't want them to spin out and crash the dang thing. Do I regret making this decision? There are some things that come along with buying an older car. A lot of the rubber things like the mounts and bushings and stuff are worn out, they have to replace. There's just stuff like that that you have to consider that you don't really run into with newer cars, especially if I would have bought something like a BRZ. This is the oldest car that I've ever owned. The front-wheel drive car that I had was a Mazda Speed 3. I bought it brand new in 2009. I had a 2007 Legacy GT. When I bought it, it only had 20,000 miles. So this is kind of new territory for me, and I'm learning new things. And it's been kind of fun. Now, if I went back and was looking for another car again, would I still go with an E36 M3? Abso-frickin-lutely I would. I love this car. I get a lot of compliments. It's super clean, super rare. It has a sweet engine, really sporty and luxurious interior. Just an overall great car to drive and great car to own. Just like every car, they do have their kind of common problems, but I took care of all that stuff and I shouldn't have to worry about it again for a really long time. The S52s in these things are known to last forever. You can beat on them and they're not going to break as long as you take care of them well. And I'm going to keep this car for a long time. Something else that kind of sets these E36 M3s apart from the rest is the fact that ones in good condition are actually appreciating. So if you buy one that's clean and has low miles and you kind of keep it in really good condition, there's a good chance that when you sell it, you're either going to get at least what you paid for it or maybe even more. So my friends, if those are some of the cars that you're thinking of, maybe you'll prioritize some things a little differently than me and end up with other ones. Like I said before, they're all awesome, fun cars, but those are the reasons why I went with the E36 M3 and I'm not looking back at all. Now I want to take time to thank all of you guys for watching and joining me today on this episode. I had a lot of fun talking about this stuff. I've been wanting to do this kind of video for a while. Hopefully it helped you kind of make some decisions, whether you end up going with an S2000, a 350Z, a BRZ, or an E36 M3. Maybe this was one of the cars that you didn't even think of comparing when you were looking at those other ones. If you're new to the channel and you're not already a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. If you enjoyed the video, smash the like button too. And if you want to see more Truths on the Streets before you go, you can click these two videos here. I've got a video where if you've never heard Vanos before and you don't know what it sounds like to switch over like that, I got some awesome sound where I put the mic under the hood. Check that one out, and I will see you guys in the next episode.